The late Milton Friedman, one of the greatest economists of the 20th century, said of our guest today that, quote, he understands economics in all its subtlety, close quote. An academic, the author of obscure tomes? No, a television personality and the author, most recently, of No They Can't. On Uncommon Knowledge today, John Stossel. You brought a sign with you. I want to ask about the sign right away.
Okay.
Not every guest walks in with a sign, John.
I'm a TV guy. I like props. I have this fantasy that the Tea Party will respond to this book, and the No They Can't title is in response to the hysteria last election of yes, we can.
Right.
And we can, but we to them became government, and I would say no, they can't. So my fantasy is that there'll be Tea Party people going to state capitals in Washington saying, no, they can't, because they can't.
Because they can't. No, they can't. Quote, the natural human instinct is to say, why doesn't the government do something? What government usually does is make the problem worse. Why don't we ever learn? Close quote. Right there, 3 sentences, right at the beginning of the book. You have the grounds there for at least one thesis in American political theory. First of all, why is it the natural human instinct to say the government, somebody ought to do something?
I think because we grew up with mommy and daddy who run our lives. And then our ancestors grew up in clans of 50, 100, 200 people, where if you didn't listen to the clan leader, you were dead and didn't give birth to us. You had to harvest the fruit when he said it was time to harvest the fruit, and those who did live to give birth to us. So we're programmed to take orders from Washington. We want to. And also, we have lives. Life is complex. I can't get my brain around how you build a sewage treatment plant myself. My instinct is to say, let them do it. And Thomas Jefferson said it's the natural progress of things for government to grow.
All right. You organize No They Can't around several dozen very compelling summary statements. And every summary statement takes the form, what intuition tempts us to believe and what reality has taught me. So let's take a few right at the top here. No, they can't. Quote, what intuition tempts us to believe, when there's a problem, government should act. What reality taught me, individuals should act, not government. Close quote. Why a preference for individual action over collective action through the government?
Just from what I've observed in 43 years of reporting. I mean, Milton Friedman got 2 things wrong. One was proposing withholding tax, which made people not feel
he admitted
taxes.
He got that wrong, yes, right.
And the other one was this blurb for my book that you read where he said, I understand economics and all its subtleties. That I was a psychology major. I don't understand. There's so much I don't understand about economics. But as a consumer reporter, and I stayed on the beat because I'm a stutterer and I didn't want to go out there and compete with Sam Donaldson and the other people screaming at press conferences, I stayed there and watched the market work. And I got some sense how people work things out. And often for profit, people do amazingly clever and successful things out of self-interest. Well, government mucks it up, and it would happen again and again. As a consumer reporter, I would call for government to fix this. And, you know, they would pass all these rules, it would make things cost more, but it wouldn't make it better. And they couldn't even get rid of the obvious fraud, the burn fat while you sleep pills and the breast enlargers. They're still selling that stuff. So all the regulation didn't do any good. But quietly, the private sector performs miracles.
What intuition tempts us to believe, someone needs to plan, and the central planners know best. What reality taught me, no one knows enough to plan a society. John, you quote Friedrich Hayek, a pal of Milton Friedman, while we're talking about Milton Friedman. And Hayek, this observation that there's too little information to plan centrally. Hayek's writing when the Soviets are trying to come up with 5-year plans and so forth. But he's writing in the middle of the 20th century. Now we have so much more information, all kinds of data rolling into Washington wave after wave. So surely you'd have to grant for example, with regard to Obamacare, that even if the government can't plan the health economy in detail, surely it has enough information now about costs and procedures to give it at least overall direction.
No, I can't agree to that. And even if it did, it doesn't know what you or I are going to do next or going to want next. It can't know. I mean, you may want every ounce of health care, and you may choose to spend your last penny on health care. I'm someone who would rather take risks and have a shorter life, and government can't know it for everybody. Hayek also said, the curious task of economics is to teach man how little he knows about what he imagines he can design. And that's right on.
Still right on.
It's my job to convince Bill O'Reilly now.
Good luck. What intuition tempts us to believe, the important thing is to have heroic leaders. What reality taught me, real heroes don't control other people's lives.
Right. I'm suspicious of the student council presidents who want to run other people's lives.
You're of just the right generation to have been moved by John Kennedy's inaugural address. You don't like the heroic mode in American politics?
I was moved by that. Hell, I'm a sucker. I was moved by Lyndon Johnson's Great Society and how he was going to cure poverty.
You have low standards.
But I watched them work, and I was gung-ho, calling for more regulation. I watched it fail. I'm not as smart as you, or maybe some of you. It took me 15 years to figure out that that wasn't working.
28 years at ABC, and one of the summary statements in No They Can't is as follows. What intuition tempts us to believe, big business runs the media, so the media support big business. What reality taught me, the media hate business. Close quote.
The kind of people who go into journalism don't like capitalism. And people at universities don't like capitalism. I'm trying to figure out what this is about. At first I thought, well, it's because the college professor, his slightly stupider roommate, went into business and makes more than he does, so he's envious.
Resentful, right.
And the wealth disparity makes people uncomfortable. It's a byproduct of freedom. If you have a free market, some people are going to get absurdly rich and others don't have that. But then I thought about the kings and queens of old Europe. And they have vastly more wealth than the average person, yet they weren't hated, they were revered. But people hated the bourgeoisie. They gave them that nasty name. They hated the very people, this is a Thomas Sowell insight, they hated the very people who sold them the things they needed to make their lives better. So I'm trying to think, what's that about? And there's all this hatred of me at the same time, because I live in Manhattan. Somebody came up to me on the street and said, "You John Stossel?" "Yes." "I hope you die soon." And at first I thought it was because they considered...
By the way, you write that Peter Jennings, when you passed in the hallway, Peter Jennings would avert his eyes.
And more dramatically, he would go.
Oh, really?
Because I was an embarrassment to ABC News, because I was not objective. So do they hate me because I'm a conservative? And where I live, that's like being a child molester. It's the worst thing you can be. But I'm a libertarian. I'm a lousy conservative. I think homosexuality is just fine, and drugs should be legal, and gambling and sex work between consenting adults. So I would thought the liberals would like me, but they're so angry because I'm a consumer reporter defending laissez-faire capitalism. And why are they so threatened by that? And I think it's because intuitively you think of business as a zero-sum game, or liberals do. So if Bill Gates got a lot of money, we must have less. If somebody makes a profit, I have less. That's why they hated the bourgeoisie. They don't understand that business is win-win.
What intuition tempts us to believe, government can get the economy moving again. What reality taught me, government does not spend money better than individuals do. Close quote. Explain that.
The economy is not like an orchestra that needs a conductor to start, or a car that needs jump starting. An economy is people with needs, and if you leave them alone, they will do amazing, wonderful things to achieve those needs. I mean, we take them for granted. We take it for granted that a supermarket has 30,000 products, and they're all cheap, and it's well lit, and it's open 24/7, and they rarely poison us. People do stuff if we don't get in the way. And the Keynesians in the administration were saying, we can spend money better than the private sector can. We have to start it, and this multiplier effect,
Right,
which is
right,
just
right.
nonsense. The government can create jobs. They created jobs building pyramids, but think how much wealthier the Egyptians would have been had they been free to pursue their own interests.
My wife used to complain, I'm interested in that, used to complain that libertarian reasoning is cold-hearted. Since markets produce winners and losers, and many losers did nothing wrong, market competition is cruel. She had a point, didn't she?
Market competition is cruel. There are winners and losers. But that's better than the alternative where there are only losers.
All right. The President of the United States on simple fairness. And you pay close attention to this, please.
That means we have to make choices. When it comes to paying down the deficit and investing in our future, should we ask middle-class Americans to pay even more at a time when their budgets are already stretched to the breaking point? Or should we ask some of the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share? That's the choice.
The Buffett rule. The Buffett rule. Rich people should be asked to pay at least the same proportion of their income as middle-class people. Transparently fair, right?
It sure feels fair, and I think it's a good political selling point. It's a much harder point to say they're not going to pay it no matter what, because the rich people are going to hire accountant and lawyer tricksters to escape it or move out of the jurisdiction. Or worse, they're going to do less, and some of them are the golden geese who provide opportunity for poor people. My response to, and these are much tougher things to say in simple politics. It's a tough battle, as Obama is very clever. But I say to him, give me a break. You and Bush doubled spending. Under Clinton, we spent $2 trillion. Now we're approaching $4 trillion. It's the spending, stupid. Don't talk to me about taxes. And Milton Friedman was right. He says the tax levels are not what count. Government spending is what counts as a percentage of the economy. It doesn't matter if it's paid for in taxes or borrowing.
Sooner or later, it will be paid for by us. What intuition tempts us to believe, lunatics want to murder us, so we must kill them over there before they kill us over here. What reality taught me, such thinking leads to an overextended military, close quote. So here's where we probe the extent to which you as a libertarian are willing to make common cause with conservatives and the extent to which, nope, you really are a libertarian, and that leads to different conclusions. So are you with Ron Paul? The war in Iraq was a terrible mistake and we should get out of Afghanistan as fast as we can?
I mean, I cringe to say this on your television show, but yes.
Okay.
And to be clear, Ron Paul also says if we get attacked, attack back.
Right.
And we were right to attack Afghanistan for harboring Al-Qaeda. And I also begin the chapter by saying, I'm nervous about this one. I'm not a student of the military, but I'm just a guy who watches government fail. The military has a brownie recipe that's 25 pages long. Government is inefficient at everything it does. Why would nation building, why would defense be different?
Okay. Now, because I so like you and admire your work, John, I'm going to work really hard to find, but you would grant this much, I think. Excuse me. You would grant this much, I hope. Even our joint hero, Milton Friedman, would say that defense is one of the few legitimate duties of the federal government.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We need a strong
So isn't
military.
it the case, I'm just hoping that we can agree on a kind of little tiny piece of intellectual framework here. Isn't it the case that whereas when it comes to domestic spending, if you're not sure of the right amount to spend, you should for sure err on the side of spending less. Defense is different. If you're not sure of the right amount to spend, you ought to spend more. Don't you think?
Sure.
Okay.
But
great.
we need to reevaluate the mission. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an automatic pilot, the same amount every year, Army, Navy, Air Force, just about. 30,000 troops in South Korea, they're freeloading off of us. 30,000 in Japan, 50,000 in Germany.
Still, right.
Why?